Hello, everyone. Hopefully the last week, the busy week, was not too bad, and you have started a good new week and peaceful new week. This week we will learn about chaplaincy in pastoral care, considering that those who want to become a chaplain and who are already chaplains will need a professional training anyways, and that our course is introductory course of pastoral care will focus more on the subjects to the regarding the nature of chaplaincy and the spiritual and other implications of chaplaincy in pastoral care, and think about how we can apply what we learned through the course to different various practices and settings. So before we move on, I want to start my lecture by reading a passage from Without Oars. This is a pretty good book. So if you kind of need a break from your ordinary, busy life, you might want to just get this one and read through. It's an easy reading book. Before making the pilgrimage to Santiago de Compostela, one step at a time was a worn out cliche. Now it became not only existentially true, but almost an epistemology for understanding the reality of those days. The pilgrim's pace of one step at a time resonates with the rhythm of our soul. Our ultimate destination cannot be our daily focus. Rather, we open ourselves to each event, each person, each sorrow, each suffering, and each joy that we discover daily on our path. Sometimes that's all we can do. When we find a place of rest for our weary soul, we discover with amazement the thousands of steps we have traveled to the point. Teresa Pasquale Matthias, writing in the Lenten devotional, Are We There Yet? Shared from her time on the Camino de Santiago. The walking is hard, but also simple, she wrote. One foot, then the next. Deep breath in and deep breath out. The everyday, in your own place journey, the heart's navigation of life's obstacles, is the much harder path to tread. Amen. Okay, so let's start with the basic questions of who are chaplains and what do they do? A chaplain is a spiritual professional and representative of their faith traditions who are equipped with unique skill sets who provide a variety of spiritual and emotional care in a pluralistic environment, which is really important in chaplaincy. Even though they are from a certain faith tradition, they are available to all people, regardless of their care seekers' relation to a particular faith tradition, both religious and non-religious care seekers. They provide support and care for people in their own setting sector, provide a listening ear crisis intervention, referrals, spiritual care and counseling, advocacy, or just be present with the care seekers. And they also provide religious services and rituals. They also advise on matters of religion, spirituality, ethics, and morality as part of ethics committees and or institutional review boards. They also think with care seekers about the matters of faith, spirituality, ethics, the self, and most importantly, regarding the meanings and values of life and life experiences of those who are in need of spiritual, religious, ethical, communal pastoral care in the midst of life transition, struggles and sufferings, crisis, trauma, tragedies, and other important moments of their lives. So when it comes to chaplaincy, there are really various sectors that we can actually see the system of chaplaincy. The sectors are such as federal government chaplaincy, Veterans Affairs facilities, the military chaplaincy, and then federal correctional chaplaincy, which is also called a prison chaplains, right? Law enforcement chaplaincy, the chief of police approves a chaplain, paid or unpaid, for example, FBI volunteer chaplains. So surprisingly, FBI, it seems like FBI doesn't really pay to the chaplains. It's all like based on the volunteering positions. Fire department chaplaincy, to meet the spiritual needs of firefighters, emergency medical service members, other staff and families and crisis victims. Disaster relief chaplaincies, for example, Red Cross in the aftermath of disasters. And these chaplains provide spiritual care to survivors and victims of local and national disasters, such as mass casualty events, natural disasters, transportation accidents, and so on. Another sector is transportation chaplaincy. They care for the spiritual and emotional needs of travelers and staff of municipal transit settings. Another sector is workplace chaplaincy. So either company employees or contractors, and they provide one-on-one emotional and spiritual support, visit their sick employees at the hospital, provide funerals, aiding human resources in conflict management, developing anti-discriminatory policies, cultivating ethical decision-making. Campus chaplaincy, for example, like school chaplains, right? To coordinate religious programming, lead the multi-faith conversations, organize memorial programming in response to tragedies, and they provide one-on-one spiritual counseling as well. Healthcare setting chaplaincy. This is really one of the most common chaplaincy, right? Hospitals and hospice, etc. Community service chaplaincy, they usually provide care to support their local communities, and usually it's done through the volunteer agencies. So among all these different sectors, chaplains are currently required in federal prisons, veteran affairs facilities, and military. So next. So let's look at some data. And this is really good because you will see at least 1 in 4 Americans have been served by chaplains, and their impression from it was pretty positive. So according to a survey done by Gallup, 1 in 4 Americans have been served by chaplains at least once in their lifetime, and they report that a chaplain assisted, counseled, or visited with them at some point in their lives, either in person or virtually. Well, COVID pandemic really changed all these like terrains of practices. Half of those ever meeting with a chaplain say the encounter occurred in a healthcare setting, such as a hospital, palliative care facility, or hospice. The next most common context is the military, mentioned by 11%, while a variety of other settings are each mentioned by less than 5%. Although many those who have interacted with chaplains are not religious themselves, most Americans who have ever been served by a chaplain report that the interaction was valuable, reflecting the combination of religious and non-religious people in the US society. Not everyone who has ever interacted with a chaplain is religious. A 57% majority of this group describe themselves as at least somewhat religious, while 17% say they are not too religious and 25% not at all religious. Most people say the interactions they had with the chaplain was really valuable. 44% call it very valuable, and 32% moderately valuable. So it's over 70. So it's going to be 76% people said it was valuable. Another 17% said it was only a little valuable, and then while 7 described it was not valuable at all. So majority of them really thought that the visit by the chaplain was really valuable and meaningful for them and helpful. Closer to 4 in 10 adults who have ever interacted with a chaplain say they discussed passages from religious and spiritual texts, 42%, as well as their religious views, 39%. 4 in 10 discussed family dynamics. A third or less say they discussed moral or ethical concerns, their physical health or relationship issues. So there are many surveys and research results that hospital chaplaincy is very helpful for those who struggle with their health conditions and their family and friends and the relationship issues as well. However, there are people who experience spiritual struggle or distress especially when it comes to life crisis, especially health-related life crisis. So let's look at this term first before we move on. What is spiritual struggle or distress, spiritual distress? So it can be defined by that. It is a state of suffering related to the impaired ability to experience meaning in life through connections with self, others, the world, or a superior being. When people have a serious illness, they come to a realization of human mortality and may ask questions like, I had hoped to travel more before this hit me. Now it may be too late. I don't know how much time I have left, but I have to make it to my daughter's wedding. I need to make amends with my sister. It's been too long and I may not have much time left. What happens when I die? Will I go to heaven? So all these questions that's related to meanings and values and relationships they had really is a hard time processing all this. And these kind of questions are also related to their spiritual distress. So in this regard, Horst's statement is very helpful for us to understand the value and the foundational role of chaplains. Horst states, hospitals do not create paradoxes and mysteries. They merely focus on them. Suffering dispels the illusion that we are infinite, without limit. In that regard, it can be a moment of truth for the sufferer. It is the chaplain's privilege and responsibility to share in that moment of truth. The chaplain treads between the worlds of religion and medicine. The tension can be painful, confusing, exciting, and creative. It is never fully resolved and perhaps never will or should be. And in that journey with the patients, walking with the patients and families in the moment of truth, chaplains help them with their meaning-making process. Current study found that the relationship between health-related quality of life was mediated by meaning, which means when event occurs, such as cancer diagnosis, a person's belief systems and meaning out of them, so meaning out of their belief systems, play an important part and in the difficult process. One research result showed that the patient's meaning system positively impacted their health-related quality of life. So what does that mean? That means the pastoral care of chaplains are very, very important for the patients at hospitals or even hospice. In fact, there are some significant survey that of 8,405 cancer survivors, 65% to 88%, depending on race and ethnicity, agreed quite a bit or very much with the statement, my faith or spirituality has helped me through my cancer experience. Of more than 700 newly diagnosed cancer patients undergoing chemotherapy or radiation, 77% reported using prayer and 19% reporting using spiritual healing. Of 406 people with a persistent mental illness, 80% reported that their religious beliefs and practices helped them cope with symptoms and frustrations, and 59% used prayer to cope with their illnesses. So chaplaincy is a very significant practice of pastoral care. However, practicing pastoral care in healthcare settings and other sectors who need chaplain support and care for their significant life events immensely struggle, and in the process of reconstructing meanings, chaplains play such an important role. So research on religion and spiritual coping reflects a religious struggle, with some people who have serious illness doubting their faith or fearing they have been abandoned or punished by God or alienated from their religious fellowship. 50% of all patients may experience some religious or spiritual struggle. Religious or spiritual struggle can compromise patients' health and well-being. Among medical rehabilitation patients, those experiencing religious and spiritual struggle had poorer rehabilitation outcomes and experienced more functional limitations. Among older medical patients, those experiencing religious and spiritual struggle had more depressive symptoms and experienced poor quality of life and increased mortality. When we encounter those who suffer from spiritual distress, we need to be ready to walk with them step by step towards their holistic restoration, checking on their embedded theology, lived theology, and belief systems to make sure that what they believe in is life liberating, as Carrie Doring mentioned, than life limiting. And in this sense, pastoral care that is provided by pastoral chaplains is really helpful, and it really affects their recovery process even. So in that sense, holistic restoration or holistic recovery or healing approach is very important for chaplains. One research group conducted a survey asking the question of like, what does the term healing mean to you? And a group of 35 adults with advanced cancer participated in the study, and they identified 9 major themes which mean healing to them. And the 9 themes are acceptance, surrender, faith, hope, peace, freedom from suffering, for example, pain, problems, or other burdensome factors, and then overcoming, transcending disease, positive emotions, for example, happiness, and recovery from illness or disease. So these 9 themes encompass, as you can see, physical, social, spiritual, psychological, emotional domains of well-being, distinct from the physical kind of cure of disease, right? So this survey actually teaches us that chaplain's role and the quality of care is quite important as the patient is going through this process and procedures and surgeries, as they seek holistic recovery and person and meaning-centered healing. It also implies the process of physical recovery is also very significant. Um, I mean, in the physical recovery process, the spiritual, emotional, and psychological uh, recovery and healing practices also are important as they deal with cancer. This spiritual, psychological, emotional well-being is really at the center of their recovery process. Okay, so this week's lecture is not as long as the previous 2 weeks. Let's think about case study. Rob is a Chinese American and lives on the East Coast. He was driving home one night and received a call from his brother. His father had been in a serious car accident. Rob and his father had a complicated relationship. Rob was the firstborn male, had been held to very high standards as a child. His father told him that he needed to be a doctor. But when he decided to pursue engineering instead, his father stopped talking to him for a year. Growing up as a Protestant Christian in China, a minority religion in China, of course, his father was also very religious and was a leader in the church. As an adult, Rob had felt this pressure to follow in his footsteps, a pressure he had always felt torn about. He and his Caucasian wife had moved away from his family to follow his career, and his parents were also not pleased with this decision. When Rob heard that his father had been in an accident, he booked a flight to visit his family the next day. When he arrived, his mother and two brothers were already in the waiting room, and his father was in the ICU. When you, the chaplain, came to check on the family, he asked if he could talk with you. So now we have already learned quite a bit about pastoral care practice and pastoral theology. Actually, in fact, next week will be the very last week of this semester. Can you believe that? This is just crazy, right? Anyways, so we have learned a lot, and by next week we will finish the whole book of Carrie Doring's pastoral care practice, right? So think about Doring's and Larty's intercultural pastoral theological approach and pastoral care approach, how this approach plays out in the care practice for Rob. How would that affect this your pastoral care plan for Rob if you come up with one? And then we also learned the importance of meaning making in pastoral care and how caregivers can be supported in the meaning making process. How caregivers can be a support in the meaning making process for the care seeker. Also, we learned Doring's life limiting and life liberating theology, and then Larty's liberation theology, embedded lived theology, and deliberative theology. Pastoral caregivers' social awareness and sensitivity towards the issues of marginality, and marginalized experiences. Systemic assessments involving all these factors of race, gender, ethnicity, economic and social class, immigration status, and so on. So many, right? And at the intersection, one person at the intersection of all these different social locational components working together. We also learned about loss and grief models, crisis intervention and management. What about last week's subject, domestic and sexual violence? What if there is a rape victim survivor in the ER and the nurse asked you to visit the patient? How would your learning from this course help you to plan for the care and establish a proper approach? In our listening skills, we also have learned MI techniques and other specific listening skills, including soul listening. All these things can be applied to the pastoral care practice in chaplaincy as well as in other contexts. When pastoral caregivers are aware of these basic factors and elements of pastoral care, the practice will be very, very powerful in that you can help the patients and other care seekers in other settings who are going through life transitions and health struggles and tragedies and life crisis. So thinking all these things that we have learned, when you look at this case study, what actually comes to your mind first? What are the things and skills and techniques and knowledge and understandings of pastoral care that you will probably utilize to help and support Rob to process this difficult situation? Because you will probably have a mixed feelings about this situation, right? And he doesn't know what to think of it, what to make of it. Probably guilt might even hit him as part of his reaction to this crisis. So think all these things together of what we have learned throughout this course will be really helpful as you actually practice your pastoral care in your own settings. So let's think about this week's readings. Drawing on what we have read this week, what skills, perspectives, and even competencies, as you could read in the readings, they actually use competencies a lot in the word. And what skills, perspectives, and competencies are transferable across different types of care, pastoral care? And what kind of skills, perspectives, and competencies are unique to each type of ministry, and what types of culture and other dynamics need to be explored and provide holistic care within these types of ministries. So think about your own ministry settings. What do you get? What do you attain from these readings in terms of pastoral care practice? What skills, perspectives, and competencies that actually that have struck you, and for you to actually think about, and maybe it's for you to think and say, oh, I think I might be able to use this skill or approach or competencies for my care seekers in my setting. The third one is discussion forum questions for this week. What articles did you read? Did you choose to read? In spiritual caregiving in the hospital, in multi-faith views in spiritual care, and there were two other sources that you could choose out of. So what did you choose? And what insights struck you? What practices might you take with you as you care for others? So try to apply what you learned from this week's readings, and in addition to all these learnings from our course, throughout the course. Before I finish my lecture today, I want to share another passage, but it's from 3 Mile an Hour God by Koyama. We live today an efficient and speedy life. We are surrounded by electric switches, some of which cost us $10, and others may even cost $2,000. We want more switches. Who among us dislikes efficiency and a smooth-going, comfortable life? Humans' legs are fast deteriorating from the lack of the most basic human exercise, walking. Automobiles speeding 50 miles an hour have replaced their legs. We believe in efficiency. Let's not just look at this negatively. There is a great value in efficiency and speed. But let me make one observation. I find that God goes slowly in God's educational process of human. God walks slowly because he is love. If he's not love, he would have gone much faster. Love has its speed. It is an inner speed. It is a spiritual speed. It is a different kind of speed from the technological speed to which we are accustomed. It is slow, yet it is Lord over all other speeds, since it is the speed of love. It goes on in the depth of our life, whether we notice or not, whether we are currently hit by storm or not, at 3 miles an hour. It is the speed we walk, and therefore it is the speed the love of God walks. The people of God were taught the truth of bread and the word of God in the wilderness as they walked 3 miles an hour by the 3-mile-an-hour God. People who come to us may walk at a different speed as they probably walk through difficult times of their lives. Their meanings and belief systems may have been ruptured by the life tragedies and struggles. We can be present with them and walk at their pace in hope that our presence with them and sharing their spiritual and emotional agonies and hardships. Eventually, we remind them of the good, caring, and loving God as they reconstruct their belief and meaning systems. Right. Have a peaceful week, everyone, and see you next week, which is our final week. Bye-bye.